Good morning, everybody. It is Hit and Hustle from IrishSportsDaily.com. I'm your host, Greg Flammang, and with me, as always, is Jamie Uyeyama from his bunker. We love Jamie in the bunker, and we are on, I guess, sort of the eve of Notre Dame's final home game of the season against the Boston College Eagles. Jamie, I have news. I will be in South Bend this weekend. I will be there. I am going to be viewing from the safe confines of the press box. I'm very excited about that. For the first time, I will be in the press box doing that. I'll be sitting next to Matt, pestering him and pointing out things on the field. So I'm very excited to do that. Thank you to everybody for tuning in this morning. Rajan says, "Go Irish, beat Eagles." And then he has shared with us that wind, snow showers, high of 28 on Saturday. I'm not thrilled about that. I wish it was going to be a little bit better. But that'll have to be dealt with. Baby B says I make a difference. And you know what? If Baby B says I make a difference, then that I take that as gospel. I think that's right.
I think that's proven, his Clemson 45-38 prediction. No, no, that didn't happen. But it's okay.
He did predict a victory.
He did predict a win.
There's no denying that. So yeah, thank you everyone for tuning in so far. If you're watching on replay or if you're watching now and you never watched the show before, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. We would really appreciate that. Jamie, I have a question for you to start off before we get into the BC preview. So as you know, the college football rankings came out on Tuesday, and Notre Dame was 18th. I think I don't have a problem with that. Jamie, do you have a problem with that?
No, feels about right.
Jamie has no problem with that. Feels about right. I agree. So, but there was something that I noticed, right? And I made a kind of a comment on Twitter, just kind of an observation that Penn State was ranked 11, and they have not beaten any ranked teams. And I said they got blown out twice. Now, Penn State fan disagreed with my take that they were blown out. I kind of think if you're down 20 in the fourth quarter, you're getting blown out. That's just my opinion. And so there were a lot of comments there about, Notre Dame and this sort of thing. Like they're basically their rationale for why Penn State deserves to be 11 is that Notre Dame lost to Stanford and Marshall. And if you're saying to yourself that's a non sequitur, then you are right. That is true. But it did lead me to ask a question though, and because this year, as we know, it's been a very weird year for Notre Dame football. Right, beat the good teams, lose to the bad teams, and I guess 2019 was like this as well, where it's like you lost to Georgia and Michigan, and then you ran the table. Right. And I think Penn State is in a good spot to do that this year. Just kind of run the table on the rest of their schedule because not only do they have a not ranked win, they don't have an opportunity to have a ranked win, right? Like the remaining games are against non-ranked teams. So would you rather Notre Dame let's say Notre Dame was to win out, right? They beat USC in a couple of weeks. Would you rather they went 9-3 and did it that way, or would you rather they, went 10-2 or 9-3 and lost to the good teams, and so you beat Stanford and Marshall? Would you make the trade?
No, I think it would be better to go 9-3 and beat the good teams, especially in year one for Marcus Freeman. I think you look at it in the terms of you lose teams that maybe you shouldn't, and those are learning experiences. But you also prove that you could beat the best teams.
Right.
And I think even if you look at, say, they lost to Ohio State, they played Ohio State better than anyone this year. Right. I think the coaching job they did in that game was very good. They were very well prepared in that game. And so I think, I think if they're able to kind of close this out and beat USC the rest of the way and kind of go on this run of, you win all your games in November. Certainly when you play like Clemson and USC in November, I think you take that just about every time.
Yeah, and just from let's just think of it from a fan's point of view, right? The high, like the high of beating Clemson's pretty up there, right? I mean, I think everyone had a good time, right? Like the jovialness of that. I think beating North Carolina at the time, I don't think anyone knew that North Carolina was going to be this good, but we knew they were a good opponent, right? Certainly better than Marshall at the time, and then beating BYU. Like I think the highs of this year were so much higher. And I think for a fan, like that's kind of why you watch the games, and like watch the season, is like you want to feel those moments of elation. And obviously the lows are low, right? I don't know that there's been like lower I mean, I guess there have been, like losing to Michigan the way they did in 19 or Miami in 17, like those are low lows. But I think, there's I guess, secondhand embarrassment that you feel with losing to Marshall and Stanford. And everyone's kind of chirping on the internet and stuff. So I don't know. I just thought, as I was thinking about it, when, people were going back and forth with me, I just thought, well, I wouldn't trade their situation for ours. I would rather be Notre Dame's. Like if I was Penn State, I would rather have beaten Michigan and Ohio State and lost to like Purdue to start the year, or some other goofball game.
Well, so okay, here's a perfect example. Brian Kelly at LSU this year. Would he rather have that, brutal FSU loss, which was, a horrible loss, a horrible way to lose the game, or would you rather beat Alabama? I mean, you rather beat Alabama every time, right? Yeah. So, I think, when it comes down to it, and then also too, like, I mean, Notre Dame doesn't have the same kind of thing with, conference and stuff too, but I mean, they won the SEC West. I mean, I didn't know if Brian Kelly was ever going to win the SEC West.
Yeah.
Like it's supposed to be the toughest division in all of college football. So, like I think that, you would take that just about. I think you'd ask any LSU fan, they would take that anytime, and most people would. Like, I mean, obviously you want to win them all, but if you had to choose, you would choose the other one. You choose the big games.
Yeah. Yep. I agree. All right. So I wanted to kick off the show asking you about that question.
Like Penn State, like it's got to suck to be a Penn State fan.
Right. Like you can't, there's nothing you can do this year.
They can never get over, and they can never get over the hump. They're just,
right.
They're just the same. Like, yeah, they they're like close to like a 10-win team like every year. Right. But if you're a Penn State fan, I think you feel even less, confident in winning a national championship than you would say, like even Notre Dame under Brian Kelly, because Brian Kelly that was his thing. He won the games he was supposed to in the last 5 years, and then he couldn't win the big ones. And with Penn State, they're just like stuck. They're totally stuck, and their recruiting is like pretty good, and they land some top guys, but it's not like great. It's just like pretty good all the time, and that seems very similar to Notre Dame, where they were kind of stuck for a lot of years, and like even just they got Nick Singleton and Drew Allar, and those are great players or whatever, but it's not like they don't have a class this year where you're like, wow, like they're gonna, you're just kind of stuck in it. And I think a lot of people were rooting, if you're a Penn State fan, a lot of people were rooting for James Franklin to take the USC job last year, because they were like, man, we want to get somebody else to kind of get us over the hump, because he's kind of stuck.
I agree. I mean, now that you mention it, like it does feel like that's a situation that Notre Dame was in, right? Where you kind of acknowledge that. I mean, Brian Kelly obviously was a very good coach, right? I mean, I've been on record for a number of years, right, saying like people need to appreciate like what the fact that he knows how to win games, he knows how to coach, and he knows how to do those things. I've talked to players on background where it's like they had full faith in him, just straight up, right? Like the fan base reaction to Brian Kelly leaving the program was not the player reaction. right? We heard it on when those guys did the Inside the Garage pod, like they did not have hard feelings toward him. You see Sean Crawford going back and interviewing him a lot for his podcast. And then again on background, like I said, like I've talked to players who they don't have the vitriol towards him that the fan base does, right? And obviously they know him, right? That there's a relationship there that they have that no one here has, right? So it's kind of, they have a different kind of perspective, but but at the same time, like looking at the outside, it did feel like there needs to be some kind of change. There needs to be, whether it was from Brian Kelly or whoever, like it's not, and it was one of those things like Notre Dame was never going to fire Brian Kelly, of course, right? Like that wasn't the deal. But you did, like we did have conversations about how do they get over the hump? Like how do they get there, right? Is Brian Kelly even really interested in doing the things that needs to be done to get over the hump, right? And it is difficult to do. And so, and I feel like Penn State's in a very similar situation. And Tyler Borgman's made a good comment here I want to put up. Winning big games does more for your program in recruiting than losing games against Marshall and Stanford, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I agree. And we talked about it last week, kind of the same thing about how big the Clemson game was. Like it was huge. And that I think, we talked about how it solidified the class and that sort of thing. And I think it brought a lot of juice to the program that all of a sudden recruiting is on the uptick. And if you go back and watch Tuesday's show, and I encourage everyone to go do that, we talked about recruiting and we talked about Kenny Minchie and him and the possibility of landing him, kind of solidifying Peyton Bowen. Now, obviously there's time still with him, right? But Notre Dame's in a good spot with him right now. Jaden Greathouse, Dylan Edwards, all those guys. It looks like, that Notre Dame's going to have a strong close to the class. And it's because, I think in large part because of what you do against the Clemsons and the North Carolinas and the BYUs and the Syracuses, all those games. Like all those games were games where people felt like Notre Dame could lose, and then they come out and win the game. So I think that's a really good comment from Tyler. All right, Jamie. So this is senior week, right? This is the last home game for the seniors, and it's kind of it's an interesting year because Marcus Freeman came out and said, unless for a fact you're not coming back next year, then you're not going to run out of the tunnel and going to be recognized as a senior or a leaving senior and that sort of thing. So it's kind of, we don't know for sure who is going to be I guess celebrated, right? There are some guys that we know. So of the guys that are leaving, like the Jarrett Pattersons, the Avery Davises, I think we're pretty clear that Foskey can leave. And then of course Michael Mayer is not a senior, but he will not be at Notre Dame next year, I think, and everyone understands that. But of the departing seniors, I mean, what are your takeaways there? Like anything memorable you want to say, or like a guy who you evaled way back when became something that you weren't sure. Tariq Bracy, for example, like this is going to be his last home game. Like any kind of thoughts on the departing class or in a particular player that you want to make a comment on?
Yeah, I think, I liked a lot of these guys as recruits. Like, Bracy, I liked him. I thought he was like a good take at the time, because he was way more of an offensive guy when he was in high school, but you could see like the pieces of what he could be as a corner. And, I think what's the kind of common theme, because it's not like the strongest senior class. It's not like there's not like this isn't Capron Lewis Moore and Zeke Mata and those guys of that 2012 team. There's not like a ton of guys, even though like people have fond memories of like, certainly, unfortunately, because they're both hurt, but Bo Bauer and Avery Davis and stuff. But it's not like there's not too many guys that out of like the fifth year guys who are going to be like Notre Dame legends or anything like that. Like, Foskey is going to go down as probably the leading sack guy for Notre Dame, and Mayer or whatever. Those guys will be remembered and thought of very, very highly for sure. But outside of those two, and and like even Patterson, even though he started for 4 years and stuff, but it's not like the same as some of these other guys. But I think like when you look at a guy like Jarrett Patterson, a guy who like had injuries, played through it, and switched positions, kind of fought through it. I think most of these guys, you'd say like it's the adversity that they kind of fought through and able to. And the guy I kind of think of the most, who's actually a 6-year guy, is Josh Lugg, because Josh Lugg is a perfect example of someone that, he was a pretty highly ranked recruit. Definitely a guy who came in, he played at a high school who was, they ran the football pretty much. So he was very raw in pass protection. I mean, and that showed, when he first came to Notre Dame. And frankly, like he really struggled, like for like basically like the first like 3 years on campus in terms of pass pro. And if you watch him in practice, if you said, I mean, I'm not sure if this guy's ever going to play, I think it would have been fair, right? I think it would have been fair. And, he kind of just grinded it out, stuck it out, and eventually played little by little. And even though he got like the 2019 season, he kind of got to be elevated to a starter when Hainsey went down. But it wasn't like, all of a sudden he's kind of in the mix. He was like back to a backup. And then when he came in, he's always been like, he's had like a bad back. He's played through like a ton of injuries and stuff. And even coming into this year, I mean, I would have said, I know for sure, I know many other people said like, Lugg's the guy. You'd be like, well, if they move Patterson to guard, I think Christopher can beat him out, or like people would say that they thought that. And you just got to tip your cap to a guy like Josh Lugg, who really has had a really strong last year at Notre Dame. And I mean, I don't think he's going to be an NFL player, but I mean, that's a guy who should be really proud of what he's done at Notre Dame. And I hope people who, were critical of his play look back at this last year very fondly for him, because I think he's really like, done himself proud and really improved a lot. And I think, Harry Heastan's certainly part of that too.
I think those are good comments. I mean, I think everyone appreciates the stick-to-itiveness of that, right? Same thing with Avery Davis, right? Like just the stick to it, attitude of I'm just gonna keep at it, and then I'm gonna break through eventually. And unfortunately, Avery Davis wasn't able to pay it off this year because he got hurt again. But I think Josh Lugg is a good example of that. I think Bo Bauer is another example of that. If he hadn't gotten hurt as well, it's unfortunate that a lot of these guys who kind of fit that role ended up getting hurt and losing the rest of their season. I'll put this comment up from Keith Herring. Lugg also seems like a phenomenal human being, clearly loves the culture of Notre Dame. I think that's definitely true. He talked about that yesterday in his press conference, just talking about how Notre Dame is about the people and that sort of thing. And I think that's what Notre Dame certainly views itself as. And so it's nice for a player to kind of lean into that and just show that they understand that as well. I mean, Foskey again, Jason Adamalola is another one where this is probably his last game. I mean, just like him and his brother, I think it's watching him and his brother play. First of all, it must be like the greatest thing to have a twin brother and you're playing next to him all the time.
Oh yeah.
And you get to, I mean, it's just gotta be something that's like so special, not just for those boys, but for their parents as well. I mean, you have sons, right? And you have a child and I have a child, and so be able to share in that, I think is a very special thing. It's been a couple of years of that. And look, Jason,
their dad he was a good guy. He's very proud of his boys, and,
as he should be,
And you know what too, and I think one of the things too, because and you mentioned Jason, and Jason has always been the guy who's gotten more attention. He was the higher ranked recruit. He was the guy who started, and he's kind of made more. Earlier in his career, he made more splash plays than Justin. And Justin has been the guy who's kind of grinded it out. And I mean, certainly too, like if I was Notre Dame, I would be trying to get Justin to come back for a 6th year, because he still has that, because he had a redshirt year.
Yeah.
Jason doesn't. I don't know if he will I think there's the other thing, right? Because of his brother going and he wants to kind of go too. And I don't even know like how he would be viewed by the NFL. I don't know if he'd be a guy who's going to get drafted or not, but he's somebody I think could, have a shot at making a team, kind of like a Jameer Jones ish kind of situation. But I think, their dad was always like, I remember during the recruiting process, he was like, hey, make sure you're mentioning Justin too. Like, Justin he's the guy who doesn't get all the love. And I think Justin, I always thought he was like better than his ranking as a recruit, and has played better than that at Notre Dame. And like, I mean, I don't know where Notre Dame would be without him really the last couple of years, right? Like he's been like a very valuable player for Notre Dame, and you're really grinding it out when you're in the rotation and you're just trying to get reps and you're trying to get in there at any point, and you want to get in on third down and be a pass rusher. And certainly he's not going to be remembered as this guy who had like a ton of sacks or whatever, but he's been a very good player for Notre Dame. And what a thing that these two brothers have this together. It's like it's just like this really cool, unique thing that like very few people in the world have.
Yeah, very cool. And good personalities too. I think it's a good fit for kind of the team. You always want two guys who are very boisterous, and like I think the deal is they're on each other all the time, and then like I think that the fact that they're on each other all the time, the rest of the team can kind of feed on that as well. So it's a good little thing. And I think Tyler Borgman again makes a really good comment about full of great people and kids that have been committed to the culture, not a ton of elite talent, but lots of glue. I think that's right. I think there is lots of glue, right? I mean, like even Houston Griffith, right? Like he's committed to Notre Dame. I mean, he could have left and Marcus Freeman asked him to come back. And it's like he's kind of been a whipping boy throughout the year. But I think this year he's been everything that they've asked him to be. And he's always been in kind of the right spot. He hasn't had those playmaking plays, but then again, like he's been a steady player for them. And he's committed to the university and playing his role. And there's something to be said for that. Right. And so I think Tyler really hits it.
Yeah. And I think there is something to be said too about with, the transfer portal, and guys can go for other opportunities, and I get it. And like, go, if you can go. I was a guy who transferred in school, like, do whatever makes you happy. Go somewhere that makes you happy. If you want to play more somewhere else, that's fine, right? I have no problem with it. But I think with like a guy like Houston Griffith, it's a perfect example. Like, I don't know if he was ever going to be this prominent guy, no matter where he went. I think he just kind of who he is as a player, right? Like you said, solid and has done his job and done that, but he probably was never going to live up to the kind of the hype that he came in with, no matter where he went. So if he had transferred, a couple of years ago before the last season, when he was in the portal for a short time, just say like he went to Florida State or one of these schools that was trying to look at him, what would his future have been like? Would he have started at Florida State? Maybe. Would he have had he wouldn't have won as many games. He wouldn't have won as many games. He wouldn't have had that. And he can always just say and I'm not taking shots at like a guy like Malik Zaire who left, and he left because he had an opportunity to start at Florida and whatever, right? And he wasn't going to get an opportunity at Notre Dame. But I'm just saying, it's just funny when I think of like Malik Zaire, and he's like very much like Notre Dame is my team and all this and whatever. But it's like, yeah, it is your team, but you also have your other team. Yeah. But like a guy like Houston Griffith can always say like, I'm a Notre Dame man. This is all what I'm about. And all my blood, sweat, and tears went into this program. And, he can walk out with his head held high, like thinking about what he kind of did, like for all those years, for all these things that people don't even take into account. Forget about the games, like getting up at 5:30 in the morning to go do like mat drills when it's snowing outside in South Bend. Like that sucks. And Houston Griffith had to do it for 5 years. So good for him, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, and it's like the attitude has always been good, you know. It's just that he wasn't a. I mean, who knows what, you know? Obviously, any player who feels like they should be playing and not playing, there's gonna be something there. But I think publicly and outwardly with his comments to the media and everything, it's always been like team guy, team guy, team guy, and that's good. And I think Keith again, you know, I think to bring it home, I think Braden Lindsey's recent comments, like the receivers have had a tough year, and it's tough in terms of just opportunity, right? Not their own play. And to me, I think we've always tried to talk about the wide receivers this year as like they're performing well. They're not being given the opportunity because of the nature of the offense, right? And those struggles have been well documented. We don't need to go into them right this second. But for the receivers, you know, they're catching flack and that sort of thing, and they're not getting opportunities. And Braden Lindsey, we've talked about how he's had a huge season on the table for him this year that just hasn't materialized for one reason or another. And he gets asked a question about navigating that, and he's like, "No, it's not navigating at all. Like I go out and I play, and I'm positive. I get to play for Notre Dame. I have great teammates in a great university, and so of course I have a positive mindset." And it's like, I don't want to give him. I don't. It's one of those things. Like it makes you feel good. It's a
Yeah.
nice mindset to have, and it's not that he would be at fault for being like, yeah, it's hard, right? Or kind of focusing on like, yeah, I wish it could go different, but he had a different mindset, and when you hear it, it just kind of uplifts you. And I think there's something, and I think the whole class is kind of like that, you know. And to go back to Tyler's comment, like glue guys, right? Lots of glue, and a lot of the key players, especially are you know, on defense with Ben Morrison and Jaden Mickey and those guys, like they're young players, right? And especially on offense, right? Like Estime, Diggs, you know, Styles, Merriweather, Thomas. Like these are all younger guys playing key roles for the first time, right? And they're playing major roles. And I think the glue, um, that's a good comment, Rajon. I think the glue
Yeah.
of this class makes it possible, right? And I'll put on Rajon's comment now. Dare we say, are we talking about traits? I think we are, Jamie. I think we are
I
talking about
mean,
traits.
it is. I mean, I always talk about traits when I'm talking about like athletic traits or whatever too,
Yeah.
but Brian Kelly's traits or whatever that he always used to talk about. But I mean, I think there is something to be said about, um, you know, when people talk about the culture of Notre Dame football and what it's been, um, it is important because it's easy to say, just run off this guy. He's never going to be an impact player. He's never going to be this star here or whatever. He's never going to be whatever. But if a guy comes out and works hard all the time, like perfect example, Clarence Lewis, and obviously he's a junior. He's still got
Yeah.
another year, but like that's a guy who like literally as he plays hard. He plays hard. And guess what? He's made plays and stuff too. And is like a guy like Benjamin Morrison, he passed him, right? But like passed him on the depth chart. But Clarence Lewis didn't stop playing hard or making plays or having an impact. And if he wasn't like that, you know, maybe Benjamin Morrison's the kind of guy who's self-motivated or whatever, or maybe that's the kind of thing that you see. This is how the vets work. So now I got to work like this too. And I think that it is something there that is part of the culture. And that kind of stuff matters, right? So that's why it's good. Like, even when you think of like all these, everyone always says like, you know, would you bring this guy back for a fifth year? And Notre Dame always ends up bringing him a guy. You're like, I don't think this guy's going to start. Why are they bringing him back? And really, they're bringing him back because those guys still are part of that culture and it matters.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
I
Baby Beast.
completely
Who
agree.
cares about CJ Carr right now? We're talking about the seniors who put in the time. This guy's going to
it,
be a senior in high school
yeah.
next year. We don't need to
CJ
talk
Carr.
about him right now.
CJ Carr is a 2024
He's a
commitment.
very talented player.
We will have. We will spend
We will
lots
talk
of.
about him a lot over the next year.
We will spend
Like
lots of minutes and lots of time
probably for the
in the
next
next
5 years,
for the next
right?
5 years on CJ
Yeah.
Carr. Right. So, yeah. So we're talking seniors, and right now we're going to talk Boston College Eagles, Jamie. So here's my take. and we'll get into the offense and defense preview in a second. But my take is I don't think BC is really that much different than like Stanford or I don't know. I guess they're probably worse than Syracuse is. But I guess the point I'm trying to make is like I watched their game last week against NC State, and they are the type of team that I don't think they're not very good. Their offensive line is not good. Their running game might be the worst in college football.
By yards per carry, it is the worst.
Yeah. The quarterback Moorhead, I think he's a freshman. He does a lot of freshman things. He's got a pretty good arm. He's got a pretty good little release and
talented.
everything. He's a talented player, right? And if you mess around on him and you let him kind of stand in there and make a throw here or there, he could get you. Zay Flowers is a real guy. He is real.
Yeah.
And they if you let them score, 17 points, if the offense is struggling, then that's how you lose a game. And that's how Notre Dame has lost games like this. And BC is not so bad that a bad Notre Dame performance won't let them in the game. That they're not so bad. They're not good. They're not good. But you know what? Stanford is not good. And Marshall's not good. And Notre Dame found a way to, not put the ball in the end zone against those teams, and they found themselves in a game in the fourth quarter. And I'm not going to predict that's going to happen this week because I don't think it will. But you can't say it would be surprising, right? You can't say that. So I don't know. What's your bird's eye view take of Boston College this week?
I think they are like Notre Dame is a horrible matchup for Boston College.
Yeah.
Just what Notre Dame is good at, and what Boston College is bad at, and then also what their kind of strengths don't overpower any of Notre Dame's strengths. So, I mean, there's always the caveat of yes, what happened to Stanford, what happened to Marshall, and that could happen. But I also think that having the Navy game the way it went at the end of the game is kind of was perfect for Notre Dame going into this game. And then also BC beating NC State, which this is the other thing. I don't know if you watched the full NC State game, but beginning of the game, NC State looked like they were going to run them out of the building.
It would look like it was going to be a boat race. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that they, they kept fighting, and you give them credit for that. And I'll give them credit for that all the time. Boston College will continue to play hard, and you can't take your foot off their throat really, because they'll keep playing hard. And I'll give that to them with Jeff Hafley and Tim Lukabu, especially on defense. I think they play hard, and they got some good players on defense. But in saying that, I think there's no reason why they're going to throw it 50. Yeah, maybe even 60 times in this game. There's no reason why Notre Dame shouldn't have 5 to 8 sacks in this game. And really, I think, Notre Dame's defense in terms of their pass rush, what they've done, what they do in terms of in coverage and stuff too, I think they're going to frustrate BC in a lot of ways, and I don't think BC is going to score a lot of points because of that. Right. Well, thanks, Bernie. Yeah, I mean, these guys probably should get talked about a little bit more, and I know we're talking about more of the stuff that's relevant to game week to week. But this is why the senior week it's time to kind of celebrate these guys. And I think on offense too, although they do have a good stuff rate, and they do have they have a couple of really good guys on the defensive line. The linebackers are tough, they're downhill dudes, but I don't think they're great athletes. So I think you can take advantage of them. I definitely think that in the secondary, they're just meh, right? They're meh in the secondary. So I think Drew Pine can have his 50% kind of game, but I think Notre Dame could still run for 200 and kind of control the game from there. And then plus, I think you look at, this is the other thing we know. Notre Dame, always going to have the advantage on special teams. Always going to have the advantage on special teams. And then I think going up against their offense, which is not good, and they have some good skill guys. I think Boston College is going to be put in bad spots for the whole game. So, I don't think it should be that close. It might be, but I think even if it's close at like halftime, I think Notre Dame will pull away in the second half.
So it's funny. I kind of wrote a similar thing in my preview or my prediction post that I sent to Mike. I think the special teams too. I think Notre Dame's going to score another touchdown on special teams this week. It just seems like it's in the air to the point where other teams expect it now. Like special teams goes out there and they just kind of know, like, we're going to give something up to Notre Dame. They have a trick. They have something up their sleeve that they're going to get us. And I think other teams expect it, which is very fun. I think it's fun to be like, oh, special teams is coming up. Let's see what happens. That's a cool thing to think. So I agree with your assessments and just like looking at what type of team Boston College is. The thing is like so the thing about Notre Dame being not like a very good red zone team is you give it to any team 14 possessions. If they score on 3 of them, right? That's not unexpected, right? The problem is like you're if you're giving up touchdowns on every good drive that they have, then they're maximizing their total points, right? They can have 3 scoring drives and it's like 13 points instead of 21 points, and that's kind of what Boston College did against NC State. I mean, the thing about the NC State game too that you bring up, they came out. Boston College had like 2 3-and-outs. NC State, the first 2 times they get the ball, they drive right down and score a touchdown. A hot knife through butter, right? But NC State has a backup quarterback. And they got
real conservative at the end.
Too. He started doing backup quarterback things, right? Like they were fumbling snaps, and they first and goal from the 5, and they're getting field goals out of it, right? And suddenly, like, they have 4 scoring drives where it's like we have a total of 28 possible. We end up with 20, and you end up losing by a point, right? And it was kind of like a rainy day and stuff like that too. But it's just, that's Boston College won the game basically how the game against Navy played out, except that Notre Dame ended up scoring 35 and not 14. Right. And that was the big difference there. But like NC State came out, looked real good. And then they just kind of stopped looking real good. And Boston College just kept stringing drives together. And like a lot of their drives are just ugly, terrible, like nothing going on, lost yardage and that sort of thing. But then they hit a couple plays. They have one where they hit Zay Flowers on a crosser, which is like a nothing play. And the DB takes a bad angle and misses him. And then there's a block on the sideline. All of a sudden he's down the sideline. He scores a touchdown on a nothing play, right? Like a little short, like 1-yard catch. And then that's kind of how it happens, right? But when you watch them and you watch Notre Dame, what they should be able to do, the thing about, Tommy Rees talked about teams playing zero coverage against Notre Dame. I don't think Boston College is going to do that because a lot of teams don't like that. It's very uncomfortable to play zero coverage.
People are adverse to risk. They just are.
You don't want to do it.
The reason why Navy did that was because they were losing 35 to whatever it was at the time.
35,
right?
13, yeah. Well, 35-16 when they started to do it.
Yeah. Like they're doing it because literally one more score ends the game.
Right.
For them. So they're just like, might as well. Let's see if we can get a turnover. Let's see if we can get a sack, whatever. And guess what? It did get them back in the game.
Yeah.
And if their offense was was kind of half decent in that game, they probably could have won the game, right? But Notre Dame's defense ended up doing well. But like that just it is like crazy to do that, and which it also just makes it look even worse of how like what Pine did in the game, right? But it's just, and this is why I just can't see, because it's like, I actually think in this game, if they were doing that and then Pine was like not throwing, I think they would pull him in this game.
Yeah.
Like I think they would, because they just be like, we can't, like, we need to win the game, man. Like we just, we'll just call, Angeli can just throw a crosser here. Like we don't need anyone to do anything more than that, right? Like,
yeah.
So I think, I think it's and it's one thing too to be like in the heat of the moment when you're like yelling at Pine to do this or do that or whatever, but it's another thing to be like, you watch the practice all week and it's like, Drew, this, like just pounding it into his head over and over again. And I mean, I'm not saying he's going to be completely change like how he is as a quarterback, but like, I mean, I would find it hard to believe that they wouldn't do better.
Well, not just that too, but I think a couple things. I think Reese would call some different thing. I think he would call bubbles and stuff, get the ball out.
Bubbles. I think they would, a lot of stuff with the backs, I think.
Like slip the backs and that. So like, I think Reese would react different. And I also think like, what did everyone say post Syracuse? Oh, drop eight on Drew Pine, right? That's how you beat him. And that's what we're going to do. Yeah. In the first half, Navy dropped 8 a couple times and they got shredded for big plays. Right. So I think there's something there too, where it's like, hey, this is what it looks like now when someone goes 0 on you on every play. Okay. And you need to be ready for that. And we saw that he adjusted to one thing. And, I think there's a reasonable expectation he can adjust to that too. Because 0 blitzes aren't the thing about 0 is you're not supposed to know when exactly they're doing it. Right. It's not that you can't identify a pre-snap, but you don't know. Like if a team knows they're going to do blitz 0 on every play, that you should really eat against that, because right? Oh, okay, I know exactly what matchup I can get. So that's the thing. It's like 0 blitz is supposed to be used in moderation, not as an every down thing, right? So I don't see that being a long-term strategy. I don't think
it's funny though, because I guess I didn't really think of what, I don't know, I just like blocked it out, but like, I used to be a high school defense coordinator, and we were losing in a playoff game by 18 in the third quarter, and we like couldn't stop them. Yeah. We couldn't stop them. So and then I was just like, well, guess what? I was just like, well, I'm just going to keep bringing double A gap pressure. And just like, I'm just going to see, because we're not stopping them. And guess what? They couldn't block it. I don't know why not. They couldn't block it, but they just couldn't block it. And I literally called double A gap pressure, like how Navy did. And we came back and ended up winning the game, right? And they literally never got a first down the rest of the game. So, I mean, in saying that was like going against it was against a wing T team, so it's like a little bit much different than what you're doing against.
Well,
and
what I was gonna say, like in the game, it's not part of the game. So what I'm saying is, I don't think BC is gonna game plan to go 0 on every play, right?
No,
if you're in the game and you have to figure out a way to stop them, and you have to figure out, okay, our game plan isn't working, we need to do something. Let's call 0.
Yeah.
And I bet Navy didn't even think they were going to do
There's
it.
No way. There's no way.
It's just like, I think they just thought, I just think they did it a couple times and it worked out.
They already got beat on 0 for a touchdown earlier in the game.
Right.
Or twice they did, right? So
right. Yeah. Right. So it's like, we're going to do it a little bit. And then once it started working, it's like, let's just do it until it stops working. And it never stopped working, right? And look, congratulations. I guarantee you, Navy will, whatever game they have next, they will not blitz 0 on 17 of 18 plays.
No,
they won't. So yeah, I there's that factor. I did notice today that there might be a little bit of wind, which probably helps Notre Dame, considering that BC wants to throw the ball. however many times, 50 times, right? Like BC cannot get into a running contest with Notre Dame. That will go very poorly for them. They ended up with negative net yards rushing last week. So that just kind of, I mean, obviously sacks are included in that, but
yeah, but they didn't run the ball at all, really.
Well, yeah, they didn't get sacked for minus 200, like,
yeah,
obviously there's it's like you're getting sacked for minus 20 or whatever. It's like it's not a good running game.
You know what? I did want to bring up one thing though about how BC will go 12 personnel quite a bit, but obviously they don't run the ball that well. So, but I think they do it to get teams out of nickel to get Zay Flowers more better matchups.
Got it.
And that'll be interesting, I think, to me if Golden and Notre Dame, if they decide to play match that, or if they're like, we're going to stick to nickel because we're like, you're still not running on us. Like, so that I think will be interesting to watch.
What do you think Notre Dame should do?
What I would probably do is I would start out in nickel and say, well, let's see if they can run on us when they're like this. And if they did, then I would switch it. And then I'm sure obviously their counter to that is they're going to try to take shots with Flowers. But then I think with everybody else on their offense, you could kind of, even if you just wanted to just single everybody else up and just bracket Flowers on every other play, I think you'd be probably fine.
Yeah, I mean, I would just invite the run. It's like just
I would too, yeah.
Yeah, run it. Like
so
that's
which is why I would go.
Yeah. Just stay in nickel and just like invite it. Like fine, that's fine. We'll run. Be patient enough to run the ball down the field all game. Because even then, like you give this offensive line a matchup, it's not like Notre Dame can't win one-on-ones, right? Like they still have to block Jason Amendola. They still have to block Riley Mills. They still have to block Howard Cross. They still have to block Nana. They still have to block Justin Amendola. They still have to block Foskey. Like they still have to do it. Just because they have a favorable matchup in their eyes, this doesn't mean they can do it. So, yeah, I would invite that. I wouldn't match with them. You don't need to. You definitely don't need to. So there's that. I don't know, Jamie. Any final thoughts? What's your prediction?
I think I predicted 34-14 for Notre Dame. But honestly, I'm not even sure Boston College is going to score 14. Maybe I'm being too Notre Dame friendly with that, but I don't know. I just think how they match up, them having to pass all the time. Like I just think if they're in third and long all day, I just think I don't see them scoring. Like I don't see them scoring at all. So I think they kind of need, even to score 14, they need like one big explosive Zay Flowers play that either gets them like in the red zone or a touchdown, and maybe multiple to be able to do that, because I just can't see them driving the field on Notre Dame very often.
Yeah, agree with that. I predicted 36-16. I don't know how Boston College is going to get to 16. I just wanted to pick that number.
I just figured it's just whatever. Like I figure like they're gonna keep playing hard the whole game. I think it's like also too like this Notre Dame team's been known to like let up, and you're like, oh okay, or like all of a sudden like whatever. I don't want to pick on anyone, but like they put in some twos on a series, and you're like, oh, this guy got beat, and you're like, oh, it would have been nice if they had been.
Yeah, like there's 4 minutes left in the game. Notre Dame, it's like 36-9, let's say in this situation. There's 4 minutes left. Yeah, and they're just their quarterback's just standing there, and everyone's kind of like cold now. It's like, okay, Like let's just we're just
One
playing
thing
it
that
out.
I would really think I would like, I mean, BC is going to they're going to run some kind of gadget stuff, fake, like they're going to do it, like that. And also, too, one thing which probably doesn't get talked about because their offense is so bad, but I mean, John McNulty obviously knows Notre Dame, knows the program, knows probably the personnel, probably better than a lot of people. So that's going to be kind of interesting there. Obviously, they've had kind of a miserable. I don't even think he's done a terrible job. I just think personnel wise, they're just screwed.
Yeah. Ray Jean says to me, have fun at the game, bring them luck. Hope to bring them something. Hoping something good. I have to decide how I'm gonna do the morning after recap because I gotta fly back, right? I gotta get back to Chicago and get on a plane. And plus I'm on Eastern time. So like I'd normally do it at 6:30, but then that would be 3:30 Eastern or Pacific. So I need to figure out what to do. I might do it at night. I might do like a night after recap or whatever. So we'll see what I decide to do. But that's Rajon says 41-7 George Tackett's touchdown on senior day. I think that would be nice.
Yeah.
If George Tackett's got a touchdown on senior day.
Yeah.
Notre Dame. So all right, that's what we're gonna do it for today. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Once again, if you like the show, haven't subscribed before, and never seen us before, hit the like, hit the subscribe button. I'm going to be at the game. I'm going to do some at the game fun things for the site. It'll be Jamie and Mike on the post game this week. And then I'll put on Twitter and on the message board what I'm going to do for the morning after recap. Still try to put something out for everybody. Oh, Steve Miller coming in at the end.
Steve, you're the man.
Guys, thanks for the show. Hoping for a stress-free Saturday. Yes, stress-free, please. Let's have a good one. Let's be in for a good one for 60 minutes. So thanks again, Steve, for the super chat at the very end. And all right, have a good weekend, everybody. We will talk to you soon.